The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast with limited commercials. Now, here's host, Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Geneva, your host, every Saturday, 10 a.m. right here. And all of the previous shows are on NoNonsenseRoundtable.com or wherever you get your iHeart podcast. Now, I have a guest in my office today, my studio, with the No Nonsense Roundtable studio. And the reason I have this gentleman in my office is because of a fella by the name of Wease. I've made a connection over the years with Brother Wease. And I have to tell you, Brother Wease is in the National Radio Hall of Fame. And, you know, this guy, I mean, he is nationally known. I think he chased Howard Stern out of town. I hear the story is. And he treats me like an equal. I am honored that I know Wease. And Wease says, well, you need to have this guy, Teddy Bucks on the show. And, you know, it's Teddy Bucks. And Teddy Bucks has been involved in the music business for a long time. And so this guy sends me an email, and this guy is Ted Volk. You know, and okay, Ted Volk. Well, I'll be there on such and such a, there. Who's Teddy? Well, who's this Volk guy? So I was hoping I had the right guy, and I do have the right guy. So we're going to start with that. How is Volk and Bucks the same thing?
Yeah, there's only actually three people who actually call me Teddy Bucks, and Wease is one of those people. Wease is, for me, he's a legend. I mean, just as put it, if there's such a thing for me as Mount Rushmore of people that, I learned from or I was a part of, he'd be one of these guys. And it's pretty innocent, the whole thing. My senior year of high school, I went to Fairport, graduated in Fairport, and I was in some business program. I think it was called DECA. I don't even really remember. But the year before, you go to the Catskills.
Okay.
A bus of us went to the Catskills. I remember that. I remember the bus ride. I don't remember if it was like junior year or senior year, but that was the year of Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll. I remember everybody was singing it on the bus that day. But it bugged me because we had to raise money to go to the Catskills. And what you would do during that era, and I'm sure it's still a thing, we would sell candy bars. You go knock on somebody's door and, hey, please go buy my Reese's, peanut butter cups. And I never liked doing it. And so I thought, well, wait a second. Rather than do something like that, why don't I actually shoot for the stars? Why don't I try to put a concert on at my high school? And I think Obanoff was his name, Mr. Obanoff. He was a great guy. I think he was kind of humoring me. I said, hey, I want to put on a concert. And I don't think he actually ever would have thought anything would have happened. So I went down to the Penny Arcade. There was a really popular local band there called Bucks, Buxx. And I said, hey, I want to put on this concert at my high school. Would you guys play? And they said, sure, no problem. So I worked out the deal with them. I put the show up at the high school. We had over 2,000 people come. It was like amazing. And it paid for the whole thing. It paid for 50 people to go for free to the Catskills. And it was a great week. Simple.
So how do you get 2,000 people to show up? I mean, I mean, that's enviable for somebody who's been in the business for like 50 years. I mean, 2,500 people, what'd you do?
Yeah, we had the whole high school gym filled up that night. Well, Bucks was somewhat of a popular band locally. They were played at CMF for, I think, leading up to that. And they had like a record out. And I think that, I don't know. They're just, it's like anything else. Like a tipping point occurred in terms of like the fact that there was going to be a concert, things were going to happen. Something like this never really occurs. And it actually worked out. It was a fun experience. So then when I got to CMF, when I graduated high school to become an intern there, they knew about this story. I told them about the story, and then there's the name with Dino and Orist and Brother Wease, who at the time was an account executive. And I remember just recently, I think I listened to the podcast with you and Wease together, and he talked about, on your show, he talked about the first time he actually was on the radio, and I'll never forget that. Wease was he did weekend overnights. That's where he started. So it was like 3 a.m. Now, right after high school, and I went to community college first. I went to MCC. I ended up getting a job at a place called Peter's Cellar in Pittsford. And Peter's Cellars was kind of a really cool bar where a whole bunch of 19 to 24-year-olds would go. But we got to play a whole bunch of really cool alt music, dance alt music. That's what we did. And so when my shift would end, when the bar would close, it'd be 2 a.m. So I remember, I'll never forget it, Weeze's first night. It must have been like 3 a.m. And I remember him playing In a Big Country. And Joe Boxer's Just Got Lucky. Those were the songs happening at the time, and he was the DJ, and I'll never forget that. It was like 3:30 in the morning, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever because Brother Wease was kind of like, but even what you see on the air, what you hear on the air, he was like that at the station. And he was like the coolest guy. I mean, it's just like, it's hard to understand, and again, I've been very fortunate to be around a lot of people, a lot of famous people, Hall of Fame musicians. And it's like, why is LeBron James graded 18, right? Yeah. Why do people are attracted to Weeze? It's just, some people just have it. And he's just one of those guys who always had it. And then of course, to see what happened with him after that. And one of the great things about him is that he wasn't young when the transition occurred, and he was like a really big time, in my eyes, he was a big time, sales rep at the station. Yeah. And he kind of gave that all up, and to start to do like weekend overnights or do the 10 p.m. shift, there's no money in that. Yeah. And so for him to make that move at that stage of his life, it kind of says the type of person, that he is. And here we are years later, and he's still like the guy.
He's an icon.
Oh, he's an icon. No, the thing about good as it gets for me.
Yeah, the thing about Weeze is you can like him, not like him, but he is. It's like the Sinatra song. My way. I mean, this is a guy who's living his life his way, and he's not going to deviate from that. I mean, he's very genuine. I think people relate to that because he's he might have the word wheeze, but he's not a weasel. You see what you get when you he's a genuine guy, and like I said, he's treated me really, really well. So the question I always,
when you say that you like people don't like, that doesn't enter my, it just doesn't. I mean, because to me, I see like, it's just like a true legend.
I got that. He will freely admit there's some people that don't like him because of the way his politics are, the way he views some things in the world, and he freely admits that. He said to me once. I don't know if he said it on the air when I talked to him. I talked to him for about, I was almost like 2 hours before I started recording him. But he said, we were talking about ratings. And he was saying, ratings, I get paid, and I want ratings and everything. He says, but you know what? He says, whoever's listening to you, you're number one to them. He says, now Lonsberry does a completely different shtick than I do. Mm-hmm. He says, whoever's listening to Lonsberry, he's number one to them. He says, so you have your audience, you respect your audience. It's like having friends. You have 5 friends or 15 friends. Who cares? Because those are the people that are engaging with you. So we have like a minute left in this section, but just in like 2 words, what did you want to do when you were 10 years old? I love that question.
Oh, I wouldn't have any concept at all of what I would want to do at 10 years old. I knew at 10. Look, I really come from nothing. So to think that there was a plan and I had a father who was a professional tennis coach or something, and this is what I was going to do. No. That there was nothing like that at all. But if I look back at what I did at 10, and then to see how I evolved, then I guess you could say I was planting roots that I didn't know about. Okay. And so like when the Jerry Lewis telethon, that was a big deal back in our generation. Yeah. And so at the age of 10, I would figure out ways to raise a ton of money for Jerry Lewis. And then I would collect all the money. And then I remember I would take the bus downtown, and which I can't believe looking back at it, I would do that at 10. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine letting a 10-year-old in today's world?
Not in today's world.
You wouldn't do anything like that.
Well, we are about ready to head into a break, and we are going to catch up with everybody, after the break. This is Dom for my friend John McClurg. John has 2 dealerships, McClurg Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram and McClurg Chevrolet, both in Perry. Hey, you don't buy a car all that often, so when you do, shouldn't you go to a place you can put your trust in? You can depend on McClurg.
John's dealerships are family dealerships where people you deal with today are the people you will deal with tomorrow. No nonsense. Go visit them at McClure, ChryslerDodgeJeep.com or McClureChevrolet.com. This is Dom Genova for my friends at Martin Ising Dry Cleaning in Fairport. Well, it's that time again. You're starting to wear long sleeve shirts and you got to schlep them to the dry cleaner and schlep them. Well, no, you don't. No, you don't. You do what I do. You call Martin Ising Dry Cleaning in Fairport. They pick them up and they drop them off and they do a great job. Their Google rating is 4.9 out of 5. You can, oh my God, it's amazing. Their number is 425-4242. 425-4242. I use them. You should use them.
Well, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to No Nonsense Roundtable. We're talking to Ted Volk, also known as Ted Buck. And Ted was introduced to me, or I was introduced to him through Brother Wease, and he is involved in the music business. And so, Ted, you said you don't actually play, but you're involved in the music business. Very right. Kind of explain that. How'd you get involved in the music business then?
Well, it's a series of accidental steps.
Okay.
If you don't know anybody, you have to. It helps to know somebody, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. It helps to be around it. But if you grow up in Rochester, New York, you're not really going to be around it. Mm-hmm. So how do you actually get to those particular places? Well, a series of accidental things occur over time.
Okay.
So like when I graduated from high school, from Fairport, I went to MCC for a bit. I don't even remember how long I was there for, but I ended up in Buffalo. And at Buffalo at the time, I ended up working for John Hager at a station WPHD.
Okay.
And so I did that during college, and I was on mornings, and I was actually fast tracking to a great career in radio. That's what it was back, now with social media,
right?
Which is such a, that obviously didn't exist then. So for me, it was television, not good looking enough, journalism, not really a good writer. So I ended up in the radio route. And that's how I started at CMF, where I met Brother Wease and Dino and all these, famous people that I view as famous in Rochester. So I went on to school in Buffalo, and I actually ended up doing mornings with Taylor and Moore. I did sports. I helped John at the station, and then along the way, I got introduced to record executives who would come to the radio stations and pitch their wares to try to ask the radio people to, play, if a new band came out, we have a new record, we'd love for you guys to play our music on the station. I started to meet those people. And then my girlfriend, Kelly, who's now been my wife, we've been together forever. I introduced her to all this madness, and she actually worked at the station. And then a couple years later, she had an opportunity to go work for A&M Records in Minneapolis. Okay. And she actually became a promotional executive for A&M. I finished up college in Buffalo and then went to New York to try to get it. The radio station then blew up. John did this crazy thing on April Fool's Day to bring back 97 Rock, and which ended up actually becoming a 25-year job for him, maybe even longer, because PhD actually ended up like flipping formats and got sold. And John went on to 97 Rock. I graduated from college. And so I went on to New York to try to get a job in the record business. I failed miserably. It was a terrible experience.
What were you doing, and why did you fail at it?
Well, I was at the time, I didn't realize this, and a lot of my conversations will talk about real time. You look back in real time. I was terrible in interviewing. I mean, I just made obviously horrible impressions with people, and it felt like forever. I mean, I had a bunch of friends, like 2 years. I couldn't get a job after college for 2 years. I must have had so many interviews. I just couldn't get hired, So
but an interview for what? I mean, to be on air?
No. I gave up on radio. The radio thing I moved on from it because I got so freaked out. When the PhD thing ended, I watched a whole bunch of older people lose their jobs because their owner just sold the station and didn't know what to do. And I don't know, it just kind of really bothered me. And I knew that my path in radio was what that generation, you would have to go from like Elmira to Corning to Rochester. And if you did well in Rochester, then you would go to Pittsburgh. If you do well in Pittsburgh, you would go to Indianapolis. And if you did well in Indianapolis, then maybe you would hit the jackpot and you go to Chicago. I don't know. It just bothered me that it just was something wrong with that concept. And just watching, I think the hard part was watching older people just lose everything and and not know what to do. And so that didn't work. But anyway, my girlfriend she was much better than interviewing than I was. Everything just came super easy for her. So she met a couple people. The next thing you know, she was in A&M in Minneapolis, and then 6 months later, she got transferred to Boston, and I was in New York, not doing well. But the place I was at, my car got destroyed. We got kicked out of our apartment. It was just everything. So now I moved to Boston because she's doing really well.
All right. Okay.
Failed miserably in Boston for a whole year.
Now she's supporting you? I mean, is that what it was?
No.
Okay.
She wasn't supporting me because so I would wait. I'd be a waiter.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, that's good.
Another good part-time job if you graduate from college is being a substitute school teacher. So that actually pays really well.
Okay.
And so I did that for what felt like 5 years, but it was like a year. But I did that. So finally, after like anything else, after failing for a long, long time, I got an interview with somebody at Geffen Records.
Okay.
And they flew me out to Los Angeles.
Where you live now, right?
Where I live now.
Yeah, okay.
But the job wasn't for Los Angeles. The job was to be an executive in Boston, covering the New England territory.
Well, that's cool. You must have interviewed okay for that.
Well, not really.
You got the job, but you didn't have a good interview.
Went really bad too. I'm at dinner. This is really a true story. I'm at dinner. I would like to think that it's going well, and the guy who runs the place looks at me and goes, "Man, so you really want to be in the record business?" And I said, "Yeah, it would be an incredible opportunity." He goes, "Well, I've noticed that you haven't really drank anything tonight. You've been just drinking Sprites. You don't drink?" I said, No, I don't do anything now. He goes, "All right, well, what about, marijuana? You get high, you smoke, you do anything like that?" And I look at him, I said, "No, I don't do that." So he kind of looks at me a little strange again, and he goes, "Okay, you've been talking about this girlfriend of yours all day today. Do you cheat on her?" And I said, no. It was kind of an odd question for me. I mean, he goes, no, you don't cheat on her. He pauses what felt like an hour. He pauses and he looks at me with a straight face and he goes, "And you want to be in record promotion?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. I would be great." Because if you hear all the different stories about the job, it's something, all the things that I don't do are negatives.
Okay.
And which is like a huge problem. So the interview, I think so it ends. I go back to my hotel room.
Yeah.
I call Kelly up and said, she goes, "Well, how'd it go?" I said, "I'm headed back to radio." This is not, I finally said, "This is it. This is not going to work." But they gave me the job the next.
Well, you just said you were a crappy interviewee, and you had a crappy interviewer, and it kind of aligned that this guy. I mean, those aren't really questions that maybe you're even allowed to ask anymore. I mean,
no, you couldn't do
couldn't today.
No. All the things that we could sit here for hours and it would blow your mind. But it's they gave me the shot, and which was really cool.
And so, what was your first job?
That was my first job in the record industry.
No, but I mean, doing what? I mean, you weren't. Well, my job. You weren't pressing records.
No,
what were you doing?
No. My job was I was the for Geffen Records. I was the executive that covered the New England territory, and my job was to try to convince all the different radio stations to play our company's music.
And that's way after the day where you couldn't hand them $100 bills to do it. That was different.
Let me say this.
Really? Okay.
Different variations. Different variations of how it all works. Yeah. There's been plenty of books written in.
We got like a minute left. Tell me some of the nasty stuff. Go ahead.
That's an open-ended question, but there's different ways. Let me say this.
All right, go ahead.
And I don't want to give the wrong impression.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you need a great song. Okay.
Right.
You need a great song.
Right.
And if you don't have a great song, all the gimmicks in the world are not going to get you to the finish line.
I'll buy that.
So you need a great song, and you need to be great at it.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember something. 90% of everything that gets worked in music that fails.
Yeah.
All right. So the percentages of winning versus losing is extremely big.
Well, I'm good friends with a couple of guys from the Rascals, and they said it's a beautiful morning. Mm-hmm. There was only one disc jockey in New York that wanted to play that. And everybody else is like, nah, that's not going to do anything. Now every time there's a ringtone, Gene Cornish gets like $5 in the mail. So
right.
Anyway, we are heading into the news break, and now I'm going to grill you about some more of these stories. I got to dig this out of you right after the news break.
This is Dom from my friend Jim Shelley and his Fanatics Pub and Blues Stage in Lima. We talk all the time about the great blues shows he has, and his patios open on weekends for free entertainment. Jim also has the Bills game on every Sunday. You can go there and watch the Bills in a setting that's more like, well, Cheers than a big impersonal sports bar. Exit 10, Route 390, go east a couple of miles and you're there. I'll be there. Come say hello. Well, welcome back. We are talking to Ted Volk, a.k.a. Ted Bucks, and a friend of Wease in the music business. And now we're getting into the good stuff because he's telling a story about the business, and the business is it's not your genteel, IBM corporate. It's a little bit different. Let's talk first about some of the bands that you've been associated with, known, whatever, because it's like I'm looking at this list of bands, and I'm old, so a lot of these guys I don't know, but all I know is that you look at the name and you go, oh my God, that's that I don't know exactly what they sing, but I do know the name is a big name. But go ahead.
No, I've been very fortunate. This is for my career and I think for my longevity doing it. I don't really think that, looking back at it when I got started, that I would still actually be doing this, but I've been fortunate to figure out, how to find great stuff, be involved with great stuff. I've been very, very lucky, I guess, in a lot of ways too. But I think that my favorite author, Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about something, the 10,000 hours, the outliers. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I did growing up, and you asked going back to when you were 10 years old, and especially is when I got through high school, and then after high school at the bar I worked in CMF, I learned what I was fascinated with was watching how songs became popular. It was just something I was fascinated with especially in high school, and from 18 to 23, I was crazy about the concepts, because back then a bunch of songs that were huge in England would be months before they came to America. Uh-huh. And then to watch that transition happen to the United States, it was just really something I just loved to figure out. How did it work? How did tipping points occur, essentially? Because Malcolm Gladwell wrote, I'm reading his new book now. Okay. So I would basically, I kind of taught myself how to do that. And it's just something I got really, really good at. And that's one of the ways I've been able to have the career I've had, is to try to find things before anybody else does that becomes popular.
You know what? I can absolutely get that, because I think some people, I have this expression, not everybody who plays the piano can make music. Somebody's got an ear. My daughter is a professional photographer. She just did a spread in New York Times this week. She's got an eye. Okay. So you as a creative person, you're seeing something that somebody else doesn't see. They might pass on it, but you see it. That's pretty much what you're saying.
I never really did A&R. That's artist and repertoire. You try to find something. What I actually did was take the finished product and then try to figure out the best way to make it popular.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so that's my specialty.
So what's the secret in that? What's the secret into making something popular, that you see something and you say, well, this is undervalued. It's probably more popular than somebody else would think?
It's a tough question to answer, because there's no set answer to it. Like, I've been to shows throughout my whole life where there's been 20 people in the bar. Yeah. And the question is, it doesn't matter if there's 20 people in a bar or if there's 2,000 people in the bar. What are those 20 people doing? And are those 20 people looking at this band or this artist like with starry eyes? Or are they basically all at the bar ignoring just drinking and ignoring it? Yeah. So there's tells that come along the way, and I was fortunate. I did a lot of that. I just trained myself I taught it myself how to basically, before I got to Geffen, I did a lot of that in terms of when I DJ'd and also worked at CMF and PhD. I was somewhat infatuated again of trying to figure out how did bands become popular, and it was something I was really good at, picking singles to figure out what people would like.
Yeah. So let's impress people with the people that or the bands. I mean, let's go through some of these.
I got real lucky. The first band that I got involved with in April of 91 was the first week I started at Geffen. I was in Boston, and there was a radio station there, WFNX, and Kurt St. Thomas, just a phenomenal radio executive. He looks at me and goes, there's this band coming out in September called Nirvana.
Oh, wow.
And I said, oh, yeah, okay. He goes, they're going to change the face of music as we know it today. And I look at him. It's the first time I met him. I said, yeah, that's kind of a crazy thing to say, right? And he looks at me like he would always looked at me all those years that we worked together, said, dude, you don't understand. And he wanted, and I was with my boss, and they wanted to do this thing called a radio show, which didn't really exist at the time. And he wanted basically to have Nirvana come play a show sponsored by the radio station. And I don't think at the time my boss really thought much of it, because Nirvana was still somewhat of an unknown entity at the time. And so we did that. And then September of that year, we had the band the day before Nevermind came out, which again is arguably one of the biggest rock records ever made. And it's one of those things where, when going back to what we've been talking about, that when you're in real time, you don't really understand what's actually happening around you, what's actually occurring, that you don't know that Nirvana is going to actually change the face of music, and this whole generation is actually going to occur. I'll never forget it. Kelly, my wife now, she's at A&M, and she's got a young band called Soundgarden.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Yeah.
And we always would do our laundry when we lived in Boston in Watertown, right? I don't know why. We were at Watertown on a Monday night. She goes, I just heard the best song ever from the best band ever. And she plays me the Soundgarden song, right? Which again, Soundgarden is one of the more biggest. Chris Cornell, who I had a chance to work with before he died, is again a true living legend, just an incredible musician. It doesn't really get much better than Chris Cornell. So she plays me the record, and I said, well, I got to tell you, that's pretty freaking unbelievable, but I think I can do one better than you. And she looks at me and says, that's impossible. And that was Smells Like Teen Spirit from Nirvana, which again turned out to be one of the best songs ever made. And I got to spend a couple days with the band before this whole thing went kind of crazy. So it was a Sunday night, and when we were in Boston, all the bands would stay at this Howard Johnson's hotel in Kenmore Square. And we picked him up, and I woke him up to come to dinner, and we go to the dinner, and he's a really shy, quiet, curt. And it's Dave Grohl, Foo Fighters now. He's in the band, if you didn't know that. I mean, everybody knows that. We're having dinner, and they say after dinner, oh my God, we got to go see the Melvins, which is one of the bands from the Seattle movement at the time. Okay. And they were playing at this place called the Rathskeller. So we get there, but we get there a little bit late. And then the bouncer, his name was supposed to be on the list. It's not on the list. And this woman comes like out of nowhere. I was like, I don't know, it's the strangest thing. And she grabbed the bouncer's hand. Hey, you got to let this guy in this club. You don't know who this is. And that's kind of strange, because you don't see people, again, have this type of reaction to something that's really still very brand new. Okay. There was maybe 30 people left in the bar. And we walk down the stairs, and two kids come up the stairs wearing Nirvana shirts. Okay. And they look like right there and then that they saw Jesus Christ. If there ever was a chance in my whole life, where like you see somebody, right? I think for today's world, it'd be like if you were, I don't know, at a 7-Eleven and Taylor Swift happened to be in there, right? It'd be one of those type of things. And they looked at him like, and I looked back at Kelly and I said, oh my God, that's really crazy, right? We get down to the bar. There's only like 20 or 30 people left in the place. And two more kids come up. And they're wearing Nirvana shirts, of course. And of course, why not, right? Yeah. And they look at him and they go, oh, you suck, man. and he goes, well, what did I do wrong? And then the thing goes, we're not 21. We can't get into the next show. I got you. So they do the show the next night, and it was one of the more epic shows that ever happened in Boston music. And then he insisted, this was the type of guy he insisted that we stay for another night to do a free show for anybody who was under the age of 21. So that next day, I went around the city of Boston putting out flyers to have Nirvana. Hey, if you weren't 21, come see the show. And the next night, there was only like a couple hundred kids there that actually came to that show. But he was the type of person that he was. Yeah. And needless to say, over the course of the next several months, it went. I remember there was a USA Today article that came out, and he outsold Michael Jackson one week, and there it was.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Well, we're heading into our last break, and I want to hear more about like a list of different bands that you've been associated with, and maybe some strange stories or two.
This is Dom Genova from my friends at Jack Greco Furniture. Like I like to say, you buy a car every couple of years, you probably take your money and put it into furniture for, well, decades. Now, go someplace where they treat you right and they have good stuff. Not like these big box stores. Go to Jack Greco. And this is the end of the year. They have closeout savings on their outdoor furniture. Hey, the winter's not going to last forever. It's going to seem that way, but it's not going to last forever. Go see Jack Greco.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're talking to Ted Volk, who is a record company executive. Who you work for now?
I work for a company called Hits Magazine in Los Angeles.
Okay.
But what I still pretty much do, what I always have been doing, is that I kind of like, this job has been a great job for me because I view myself as kind of like Robin Hood in a lot of ways. What we do basically now is we try to find some bands or we're involved with some bands that got neglected by the big system. They got neglected by the major labels for various reasons, that people didn't think they were popular enough, or they kind of missed the boat on. And we've done really well in that arena with some of those acts. Like you might be familiar with a band called the Lumineers.
Okay.
And the Lumineers are just a huge band. They just sold out Wrigley Field on their last album cycle. And they just were here in Rochester last summer at Darien Lake, and they've had like 6 #1 records. Similar conversation to a lot of the stories that when I had these conversations, nobody really wanted them. And we started working a song in 2012 called Ho Hey. And we got it on one station in Seattle. That led to Denver. And then I remember I was in Norfolk, Virginia, randomly enough. And I said, I got this really cool record, this band called the Lumineers. And I have the song called, so I played it for him. And he goes, wow, that's really cool. And I said, yeah. And then the next day he added the song. And then that led to 2 more, to 4 more, to 8 more, and it became a #1 record. And yada, yada, yada. 8 years later, they're selling out Wrigley Field.
Yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about when I interview people, is that you find people, it's an eye, it's an ear. This is something different. You're seeing talent, or you're seeing something that somebody else has passed by, and it's got to be really rewarding when you pick that thing up. I'll go back to myself. I started this little dealership that nobody wanted, that was open for like a couple of years. I saw, wow. You know what? You could make a good living there, but nobody else saw that. And that's a talent just as much as doing guitar riffs, for God's sake.
Yeah, I got my big break.
Plus the other thing, I don't mean to interrupt you. You're happy. I'm looking at the light in your eyes when you're talking about what you're doing. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're having fun.
Well, these conversations are fun. Getting to the finish line.
Yeah,
you're really,
let's work.
You're really. It comes at a high price. The hours are super long. You travel a lot. You fail a lot. You have to really be able to handle rejection, and that's been always a real struggle for me. Because you fail a lot more than you win. My friends only see me in. It's kind of like what I don't like about social media. Everything's kind of like a Hall of Fame thing, You see the best of, right?
Sure.
But so when my friends only see me when I'm taking them backstage to take pictures with their famous bands or something like that. But to get there, you have to really. There's a lot to it. I got my big break when I got promoted. To move to Los Angeles in '93, and I got my big break with a band called the Counting Crows. And And you should know them, right?
Oh yeah.
We were
even me.
Yeah, right. No, you should know them, right? The Counting Crows is my big break because what happened there? The president, Eddie Rosenblatt, he goes to me, and he would always call me Kid. He goes, Kid, I need you to go to San Francisco and go check this band out, because I want you to figure out how to get them played on the radio. So I went up to San Francisco. I watched the show, and I said, wow, that's pretty cool. And they asked me to find a single to work. And there was this song called, it was Murder of One. I said, all right, we'll go with that. Then the band did some convention a couple weeks later, maybe a week later, in Colorado, and I didn't go to it. But another one of my friends who was programming in EQX in Vermont at the time went to it, and he actually added this song called Mr. Jones. And I called him up and I said, Jim, why that one? And he goes, well, that was like the bounciest track. And I said, Dan, son of a gun. They didn't play that the night I was in San Francisco. So I went back to my office. I listened to it for 4 hours straight. And I said, wow, he's right. So I went upstairs to the president's office and I said, Mr. Rosenblatt, or Eddie, I said, I like to come with a different single. I want to switch to singles. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, I don't want to work that track anymore. I want to work Mr. Jones. He was just happy that I don't even really understand why he let me do it, but he was just happy that I wanted to work the record. I wanted to go do it. And so I made all the necessary calls to get the artwork done and switch to singles and do all the things that you have to do. It turned out to be a good decision. That record and that album ended up selling like 6 million.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was, and they ended up, again, they're still touring today. And it was just, so that was a key move in terms of, for me at least, in terms of establishing myself and in terms of breaking a band.
Okay. Look back on your entire career and try to pick out for me the person that surprised you the most.
An artist?
Anybody.
Oh, I'm never that surprised.
Okay.
No,
Well, how about the artist? Well, who do you think had the most talent of anybody you ever met? I'm stumping on these things.
I would look at my list and all the artists that I've been involved with.
Who would you want to be in a car with and travel to Chicago with?
You know what? When people ask me, like who's your favorite band, I always break it down by decades.
Yeah, okay.
In a lot of ways, like these past few years, I've had a chance to work with the 1975 with Matty Healy.
Okay.
And it's just the band and what he says and what he stands for is true genius to me.
Okay.
And then we AJR is another band that we broke with these 3 kids from Brooklyn, and they're selling out arenas now. And the person I work with, Karen, nobody wanted to work them either. And we figured it out, and we've had like 6 top 5 songs with them or something like that. And so it was, again, shockingly enough, a lot of people just didn't see it, and we actually did. So
well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask somebody from L.A. In the music business what we've heard of has been going on in L.A. parties and stuff, and what is it really all that crazy?
No.
Can you be successful and not drink and whatever? Can you, or is it?
No.
Nuts.
LA is so expansive. It's so big. It's so wide. You have to realize it goes from San Diego all the way to Bakersfield, all the way to San Luis Obispo, all the way. It's like a 300-mile thing.
Yeah, but I mean, in the music business, is it as crazy and nuts and whatever?
Definitively not.
So the Diddy thing is an aberration. I mean, that's
a whole different world.
Show.
Yeah, that's a whole different world. Like I said, it's all about generations. Like Weezer is another band from the 90s that I was involved with at the beginning, and there's been a lot of articles. They're doing an arena tour today from their Blue album. And they're selling out. They've been selling out shows forever. But that was something I was involved with when they were living out of their garage, and I actually felt. With that album, I felt I actually ruined their career. I was actually brand new to it. That's right when I started, when I got promoted in Los Angeles. I really did. I really felt I ruined the band's career.
Oh, my.
But because we had the first single we worked was a song called Sweater Song.
Okay.
And I wasn't sure if that should have been the first single or not. We put it out in summer. I'm from Rochester. Nobody wears sweaters in the summertime.
That's right.
I was kind of like, and then there was the woman that I worked with at the time, Rochelle Fox, she was amazing. She's just said, Ted, F off, we're going to work the track. But the song did good. It was like a top 10 record, but everybody kind of viewed him, it wasn't serious. And then the next track, and it's a great story. We're running out of time, but there was a song called Buddy Holly, which we eventually ended up, which we did work, which became just a gigantic hit. And so thankfully that happened. But I really felt that my career and Weezer's career, I kind of ruined, and it was all going to end right there and then. But it turned out...
Yeah, it turned out okay.
It turned out okay.
So why are you here in Rochester? I mean, these a few days or whatever. Are you visiting people or...
Yeah, no, my mother-in-law lives in Henrietta.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, so we try to, and Kelly and my wife, we try to get back.
Kids?
3 times a year.
Kids?
Yeah, I got a bunch of them now. Yeah, no, I do.
You look like you had to think about that.
Yeah. Well, no, I do. I have a 21, 22, and 26 or 27. Yeah.
Oh, God bless you. You don't look much older than that yourself.
Yeah.
But then again, you decided to keep your hair. So.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've always been considered to myself. To me, I always felt I was like a decent 6, right?
Yeah.
But. I think that I really have worked hard to take care of myself and do things right. So now I've actually feel like I've moved up to an 8, and especially with like my hair and everything, I feel like I'm really doing well in that arena. And I always joke with my wife, you see, there was a payoff if you stuck around long enough.
Okay, well, Ted Volk, a.k.a., it's been a pleasure having you here. I see why you're such a good friend of Wease, and Wease recommended that you come here. And I think we're going to record another section or two for the YouTube after this. And everybody, 10 o'clock next Saturday, same place, same time. It's the No Nonsense Roundtable. Okay, this is a No Nonsense Roundtable Extra. Now, we're here with Teddy Volk, who is a record executive, and you were about to tell the story before the show ended, the radio show ended, and you said something about Buddy Holly or something. What were you saying there?
At the time with Weezer, like I said, we had some success on the with a song called The Sweater Song. And it was, I don't even know why I even share this story, because I look like a fool when I share this story.
I like that.
But I don't have a problem with it now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I don't have a problem with now, with things that I actually did. But so I really felt I screwed the band's career up with The Sweater Song. I didn't do good enough, and I was still new on a national level promoting.
Well, explain what you mean by not doing well with the song.
Well,
I mean, not promoted right.
The record only went
just
to like number 7 or 8.
Okay.
And a lot of people felt that the band they just felt that
Really?
they weren't like a real band at the time. And I was new to the national scene.
Okay.
So I had to win over basically a whole bunch of different radio programmers from all over the country. And so that was, I wasn't just doing it in New England anymore. I was doing it nationwide.
Okay.
And like I said, the first single kind of crashed. It crashed and burned. And then during that moment when it was crashing and burning, the creative department calls me down to their office to check out this new video for a song called Buddy Holly. And they said, hey, what do you think about the video? And I said, well, that's kind of corny, right? And so we end up, we get the song. I go over to K-Rock in Los Angeles, which is like the biggest station in America. I play them the record. Before I actually leave the station, they put it on the radio, and the whole thing starts to like just explode, the song. The video turns out to be the video of the year.
Really?
He does a video with Happy Days, of course, you know that TV show, with Henry Winkler, and they do this thing with the video, and the video turns out to be the biggest thing. It's the video of the year, MTV Awards, they win it all, the whole thing. And then for the next 5 years, because I called that video corny when I first saw it, I'm the first thing at any meeting that I was at Geffen is say, hey, Ted, what do you think of that video? I have never since 1994 have given an opinion about a video. Any person who's asked me about a video in 30 years, I look at him and say, boy, that's great. I would never say another thing about a video ever again. But then Weezer, like I said, after Buddy Holly, and we ended up, I think that record was like 4 top 10 songs, and they've had, I think, and I worked 2 of their albums, but they've had like 20 top 10 records or something, and like 10 number ones. I mean, it's just
well, even Dave Letterman went to Jeff Bezos, and he goes, how are you going to make money with this thing?
Right.
I mean, it's just, some things just aren't obvious. That's all.
Really. I got the records played. I just made a mistake about the video.
That's
right. My job wasn't the video. My job was getting the songs on the radio, and then we did quite well on that.
So you're saying you should be in the radio music record business and stay out of video production. Is that what you're saying?
I learned that very quickly. Without a doubt.
Well, thanks for that wonderful input. Hey, by the way, I'll change the subject a little bit. Do you know Jack Alaco by any chance?
No.
Jack Alaco was another Rochester guy. Lives in LA. It's not one of these things like, people say I'm from New York and they go, oh, do you know, so no, this isn't it. He's a Rochester guy, and he has 11 Emmys. 11 Emmys. And we talk about LA and all the time, whatever. And he identifies as a Rochester guy, no matter where he is. Do you know Scott Mayo by any chance?
Scott Mayo?
Yeah, Scott Mayo's another one. You should look Scott Mayo up. He's he was the musical director for Sergio Mendes.
Oh wow!
And he just got inducted into the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. He's another guy. Scott Mayo's another guy moved from here to L.A. And you should get the 3 of you guys together sometime. That's the thing about Rochester, though. People are Rochester guys. I interviewed a guy. Do you know Rick Beato?
You know what? I didn't know. It's funny that you bring up Rick Beato. I listen to I always listen at least once a week to one of Weeze's shows on a podcast.
Yeah.
Technology is great for this, right?
Yeah.
And I actually heard that interview that day with Rick Beato with what he does. Yeah. And I've been very fortunate to be around some of the biggest artists in the last 30 years. Most of the artists I've been involved with have no clue of what the first single should be on their record or what's going to be popular. It's almost shocking that you would I would tell you that when I look down the list of the people I've been involved with, no, they didn't pick that one. They didn't pick that one. What I find rare is when they actually tell me what the single should be. And when they actually tell me that, they're usually right. And one of the things that when you do this job, and it's really, again, the concepts of it should be exceptionally simple. And that is that when you hear a song, or when you're listening to a collection of songs from an artist, right?
Okay.
And let's say you listen to 7 or 8 songs from a record, or 10 songs from a record. 80% of that room should tell you, that's my favorite one.
Okay.
You run into problems when you're listening to a record when you do that and and there's not one that you actually point to. It's and I remember, I'll never forget it, George Michael. George Michael from Wham, we're in a meeting. He just signed a big deal to come to Geffen, or one of the labels that we were associated with. And we were in an office with all the executives. I'm in there with George Michael, and he starts playing his new album. We play the first track. I'm thinking oh, okay. The second track, the third track. Now, immediately, all I'm thinking in my head is, okay, he's going to save the 4th track, and I'm going to hear the song, right? I'm going to hear the 4th. This is going to be the song. It doesn't show up. The 5th song, the 6th song. We hear the whole album, and I don't actually hear a single.
Nothing jumps at you.
Nothing comes at me at all.
Yeah.
Not because you're just begging for something like that to occur. And that particular album, there never really was anything. And it never really happened. So the job in a lot of it's sometimes you're really pleasantly surprised. But for the most part, when you actually hear music and stuff, it's usually it should
something hits you.
Yeah, and if you don't hear 80% of the people that you're involved with don't all focus in on that, then you kind of have issues.
Well, the thing that amazed me is that if you look at the Beatles are always changing and morphing from album to album to album, and that's got to be. I think that's the bane of a lot of a lot of groups. They don't know how to morph or change or whatever, and then all of a sudden it gets dry and they
Well, there's different theories on that, right?
Okay, go ahead.
What you'll actually, and I kind of subscribe to it in a lot of ways. And the Beatles, I mean, that's obviously that's a different animal. But 3 albums or 7 years, what comes first, right? And so an artist, you have them for 7 years of incredible creativity, or 3 albums, and then what occurs after that. When I started at Geffen back in 1991, Aerosmith, I remember. We worked their comeback record, and I'll never forget that. At that time, I think they were in their mid 40s, and they were already having ups and downs in their career. And then the A&R executive, John Kalodner, what he was genius at, in this particular conversation, he hired Desmond Child and Diane Warren to write the songs. And they ended up having just another career of mega hits. And then MTV was exploding at the time. And if anybody who's listening to this will remember that his daughter, Steven Tyler's daughter, was in the videos with Alicia Silverstone. And those things were huge popular cultural moments. So that is, I wish more of the older artists, that you don't see that in today's world. The older artists still want to write a lot of their own stuff, and it's hard for them in terms of hitting that place of popularity that they once had.
Well, the other thing is them getting along with each other. I mean, there seems to be guys that have a certain tolerance for each other, and then it starts falling apart at a certain point. Well, it's like anything else, I think, right? Like a marriage, even, right?
I just went on a whole 7-day bender to get Oasis tickets, and the Gallagher brothers, which that haven't played together for 15 years, and basically it just put on a series of shows around the world that are going to sell. They all sold out immediately. And I got Rose Bowl tickets in California that, they could have sold 6 Rose Bowls. And so, yeah, and I think that's why I'm so infatuated with it, is because I want to see the Gallagher brothers together on a stage sing the songs.
Yeah.
And from the 90s, yeah.
Well, I had conversations with Felix Cavalieri once, who's one of the founders of the Rascals, and what he said to me, he says basically the problem with we got on each other's nerves. He says because he goes. And this probably isn't going to make it on the air either. He goes, I was a communist. I go, what do you mean you were a communist? He says, we decided to split everything 4 ways for the 4 of us.
Right.
He says, I'm doing the writing. He goes, I'm playing bass on my Hammond organ. He goes, I'm singing. He says, and these other guys are getting 25%, and I'm getting 25%. And he says, friction, I wrote one line in that tune, so I want to get the residuals on that too, and then you see guys with different lifestyles, guys that take the money and they spend it and they just burn out, and some guys that save the money and they have nice long careers.
Things evolve, and when you don't realize how, especially when you're in bands, you're on tour buses and you're so close with everybody. I mean, it's really an intense thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it truly is. And but yeah, there's all sorts of different things. But in the end, they all usually come back together, don't they? I mean, if you really think about it.
Well, they try to too.
Yeah.
What's really amazing to me is that when you look at somebody, the other thing, the other thing is really amazing to me is that these guys from the 60s are all writing these beautiful songs, and now somebody is using the song, dancing around on TV on a commercial for ED medicine. It's like, oh my God, you just ruined this for me. I mean, Chevy like a rock. Okay, that's fine,
right.
But when these people are dancing around and they're talking about, incontinence or something, or, diabetes, and they're dancing with it, and it's a song from the 60s, you ruined that song for me. I'm sorry.
Is that Jaundice commercial? It's like the worst commercial I've ever seen.
Yeah, I know. It's all there. They're dancing. They're dancing to music that we loved in the 60s. Now you're a little younger than I am. How old are you?
I just turned 59.
Oh my God! No wonder you look young. I'll be 71 in a couple of weeks. So
you look great.
Yeah, I'm in the point in my life where I can basically do whatever I want to do.
That's awesome.
I got kids. I got 2 daughters that are successful. They love me. At least they pretend that they love me. A wife I've been married to for 38 years. I wrote an ad to meet Nita.
Wow.
Yeah. I was engaged once to somebody who heard voices. I said, "What do the voices tell you to do?" She goes, "Voices tell me to kill myself." I go, "Oh, thank you." Not doing that. So I wrote an ad, met Nita. And then, like I said, I worked for Chrysler for 17 years. So it's like, I'm not doing this. I am not going to be one of those timid souls who has to answer to somebody half my age or be on the road all the time and stuff. So we sold everything we had. We started up here. My wife said to me, she goes, "The worst that's going to happen is we lose our money. We lose our money. You get a job selling cars. I'll get a job waiting tables. We'll be fine." It's like Maria von Trapp. We went over so everything worked out good. So good.
And you've won the game. You have your place is beautiful here.
Yeah, and I do whatever I want to do. I mean, I meet people. You probably don't. Some of the guys that I've interviewed that are in the music business, you may not know. Bobby Rush, Bobby Rush. Bobby Rush just turned 90 years old. A black artist from Arkansas, and he tells of the old days back when, and he just won his 3rd Grammy, and the first one he won when he was 83. And I had him over here for lunch, and we're having a good time and whatever. So I interviewed the first Mrs. Muhammad Ali, and I'm talking to her, and I says, "You remind me of Bobby Rush." She goes, "Oh, Bobby, I know Bobby. If you ever got a 3-way conversation," and so I do that. I get and I'm living, talking and relating to these people. I had no idea. This is cool. This is really, really cool. It's cool meeting you.
Yeah, no, it's been great. No, it's I've It's funny you were saying talk about some stories and stuff. I've only actually said a few of them. So,
well, we have all the time in the world if you want to do more. You got a nice juicy story about somebody?
No, look, I've been super fortunate to still be doing it and working with a lot of new artists and older artists.
But do you have something that went right, something that went wrong, something that didn't show up on time, somebody who punched you in the nose? I mean, do you have anything that you know? I'll tell you my cheese ball story.
Go ahead.
So then it's a true story. So I'm a young guy working for Chrysler, and I was supposed to set up the hospitality suite, at the Dodge Open. So they put the liquor here, put this here, put the chips out. My boss says put it out. So he says, well, take these cheese balls and put them on the coffee table. Those things about the size of a softball, and they got nuts on the outside and everything. I'm 24 years old, by the way. He says, I'm going to go and, talk to somebody. I'll come back in about an hour and a half. So he comes back, and I have the cheese balls. And the cheese balls, he goes, you unwrap the cheese balls. I go, I unwrap the cheese balls. He says, where's the wrappers? I said, they're in the dumpster. He says, you unwrap the cheese balls. He's getting pissed off. I said, so? They'll keep. He goes, you unwrapped. I go, Fred, what is your freaking problem with me with the cheese balls? He says, Tom Pappert, the vice president of sales, could come in here right now, taste one of those cheese balls, not like the flavor. That's the only thing he remembers from the Dodge Open. He goes, and I've seen people's careers ruined for less than that. Wow. And I go to him, Fred, we lost $1.5 billion last year. We're spending too much time on the cheese balls, obviously. I'm surprised I didn't get fired.
Wow.
Because I did say that to him. We lost $1.5 billion last year. We're worried about cheese balls. That's one of the reasons why you leave places.
Wow.
Absurdity. But anyway.
No, it's been great.
Good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every Saturday from 10 to 11 on News Radio Wham 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.